All right, I want to make a video on my 78 K10 that I bought just about a year ago off Facebook Marketplace for 1,400 bucks. Not sure if you like me, constantly looking at Marketplace and see a lot of things pop up and think, hey, that's pretty cool. That's a pretty good deal. So either way, paid 1,400 bucks for it off Marketplace. When I bought it, some of the problems it had was a fair amount of rust in the cab. It obviously is just a plow truck, and that's what I intended to use it for. It wouldn't necessarily want to shift. And then on the driver's side, the door wouldn't really close very well. There was a massive gap right in here. But otherwise, I mean, the tires, look pretty good. Admittedly, I did it right. I bought it, pretty much gave him what he wanted. Bought it at night when it was cold, so I didn't want to spend a lot of time looking at it. Couldn't see things very well. It did run, does run, and runs all right. But I'll kind of go over what I've ended up having to do with it and put into it, and basically how much does a $1,400 Marketplace plow truck end up costing. So first thing was obviously the initial purchase, 1,400 bucks, and then did have to do a title transfer that was 55 bucks. As I mentioned, when I bought it, she didn't really want to shift. I bought it, about an hour away or so, and when I drove it back, I definitely kind of heated up the trans. There's a couple times she didn't really want to shift out of second for a while, so she was revving pretty good. What I ended up having to do to fix that is actually, it was super simple. I'm not sure if it was on this side or not. I don't remember, but the vacuum line for the trans, there's a section that was about yay big, and I just needed to replace that. And so once I got that hooked back up, there's a hard line that runs down, I'm not sure where that's at now, but hard line that runs down to the transmission, and then there's just a rubber on each side. I think actually I just need to replace the side underneath the truck, and then she would shift just fine. But I did end up doing transmission oil and filter. That ended up being 50 bucks. So we had the title transfer 55, the trans oil and filter for another 50. I did also do spark plugs. Basically just says here, kind of general maintenance. That ended up being 55 bucks. The other thing I did is that, so this truck originally would have came with a manual choke. There's actually a somewhere in here, this right here, so would have been for the manual choke, but someone along the line had stuck a new electronic choke carb on there, but then they never actually hooked up the electric choke. So I did hook that up, and that actually helped out a lot. Made it run obviously better here. So that was another thing that helped out on that. So spark plugs, hooked up the electric choke, no big deal there. One thing while I was working on some of this stuff and checking timing and everything, which admittedly I was never really able to confirm on this. I could never get the lines to mark up. I don't know if somebody had switched the timing chain cover or whatnot, and the marks just didn't seem to line up, so that was kind of just all by ear. But while I was messing with it, I did break the distributor cap, and so that was a $30 idiot tax. The other thing, I guess, when I bought this thing was ridiculously loud. I did look under there, very briefly while I was buying it at night, and couldn't see anything, and I did see one muffler under there. So I assume maybe there was just one exhaust, pipe leaking or something like that. Turns out I was wrong there. And the one muffler that was still attached was completely rusted out on the bottom. And then actually I thought it had a 2-into-1 under there, but it turned out the other side was just completely gone. And so that only had just a bit of pipe off the header, basically. So either way, I had to get mufflers and some exhaust and some clamps. It's not ideal, honestly. Some of the cheapest mufflers I could find, and one of these rattles like mad. But either way, the exhaust, it ended up being 95 bucks for the 2 mufflers and some of the clamps and crap, which I'm still not in love with, because it's still kind of loud and annoying, has that rattle, but is what it is. It's quieter than it was. It's actually tolerable now. But yeah, that was 95 bucks for exhaust. Oil, obviously did, you know, plugs and oil, so oil was another 30 bucks. Another thing I bought for this but haven't actually put on it here yet is just some of these cheap LED lights. I am gonna want those because it's nice when plowing at night to be able to see behind you a little bit better. I just haven't figured out how I'm gonna actually mount those things. But those things that I haven't done and been sitting in there the entire time were 35 bucks. Another thing I didn't necessarily need but wanted was these LED running lights. The ones that were there didn't work. I had to end up rewiring all of them. The wire was, I don't know, mice or whatever gotten into them. But those little running lights were 30 bucks. So those little LEDs off eBay or somewhere. Another thing that didn't work on this thing when I bought it was the speedo. And what it ended up being was, put it all back under, but here is the speedo cable, little adapter and whatnot to the transfer case, and there's a little key between those two, and that was gone. I did originally try just kind of making one from some little square stock and whatnot that I had found, and it would generally work for half a trip to town and then would stop. Eventually I just bought a key that, because nobody makes the exact key for this at MP. I don't know, I have another video on it, but no one makes the key for it anymore. They are expensive if you find it, but there's a cheaper option that is close, and I just had to grind down on it a little bit. That ended up being, let's see, 22 bucks, and I think that may have included some of those blanks that I had. So the other thing I needed to do was the fuel filler hose, right back here, just that rubber hose line that was leaking, so every time I'd fill it, it would leak out. That ended up being 25 bucks. I think I got that locally, but it was kind of cheaper online. All right, another thing I ended up needing was a fuses and some flasher thing. I can't remember what that was for. Probably for the blinkers. But one of them under there, I think that little round doodad, I think, right there. I think I stomped on that one time thinking it was the high-lows and busted that. So that thing was 15 bucks. Another thing I had to replace was the hydraulic coupler here for the plow. That was kind of expensive here, so that was 30 bucks. So yeah, the old one was just stopped. Couldn't get it, couldn't use it, so had to pry that out or replace that thing. Probably the biggest expense here that I did was the floor pans and rockers. So got those off eBay, 245 bucks. I did do those myself, as you can see by the quality of craftsmanship here. But it's at least solid now. This whole thing flexed because, I mean, there was nothing left of the rockers and honestly nothing left of the floor here. And so I cut out the old crap, replaced it on both sides. That did help with the door as well and it closing. The one thing that still is kind of an issue is that this door right at this hinge is pretty darn weak. I did cut or put some new metal in and welded that in, and it helped. But still, this thing will get kind of goofy every once in a bit and clip the fender. But it does now at least close, and the floors and the rockers are solid. So But yeah, that was probably the biggest expense and the biggest issue. When I did buy it, again, this door wouldn't really shut. It was freaking cold. They had a bunch of freaking foam and stuff that they had used to at least kind of keep it sealed. So I decided to get rid of all that. Let's see, wiper arms. I did replace these wiper arms and the wipers. One of the original wipers just flew off when I was testing the wipers and going down the road. These ones are from like some Ford or something like that, and so you can use the newer style wiper blades, which is pretty nice. Obviously when plowing and stuff, you want to be able to wipe off any snow. Transfer case oil. Those wiper arms and the wipers were, the arms themselves were $50, the wipers were 15. So they're kind of expensive, but I think it was a need. Transfer case oil that ended up being $32. So I did buy some rust inhibitor to kind of spray and test on this thing. As you can see, there's a lot of rust everywhere. That was $16. Did buy a new V-belt for the alternator. So since the plow pump is obviously electric, anytime I was moving that, it would just squeal like crazy. A lot of times that'd start up. So replacing that, got rid of that, which was great because that was super annoying. The other thing I did replace was the shocks. So I replaced all of them. They were all shot. The rear ones were completely like rusted away. So the shocks themselves for all four, $125, and shock bolts were 20. So kind of a lot. Was it necessarily worth it? Probably not. But I don't know. Sometimes I do drive this thing on the road a little bit because it's kind of fun. But so that's there. The last big things I did was the windshield. So the windshield did have a big old crack in it and was getting worse. So I found one off Marketplace, $50. Didn't replace the stripping or anything like that in it. So was just the glass that I replaced there. So 50 on that. And then I did put a very fancy review mirror on as well, and that was $23. So all around not too bad. Honestly, it was she was rusty and not ideal when I bought it, but it does run all right. Doesn't run perfect, but pretty good. No major issues. Tires are pretty darn decent on it. Admittedly, if I had to go and put new tires on all around, that would end up adding a lot to it. I did end up just having to fill this tire, and you can see it is pretty darn cracked and weather checked. So if I was going to be actually driving it a lot on the road, would probably want to look at replacing those. I may try to see, because it did come with a spare and a bunch of other garbage in the back here. Maybe finding a tire for that. This tire is no good, but it would be kind of nice to maybe have a spare just in case I ended up needing one. But you can find these are six lugs, yeah, and so you can find some tires for them on Marketplace for relatively cheap. And that's one thing actually with these square bodies, is most of the parts are honestly pretty darn reasonable. So, and you can find just a ton of parts on Marketplace and whatnot for what you need. So but anyways, grand total at $24.57. So basically put about $1,000 into this thing after buying it, and honestly it wasn't that bad. Obviously there's a number of things that I didn't necessarily need to do, but ended up kind of wanting to, like those lights, like the rockers and whatnot, shocks, so it could have been done cheaper, but anyways, kind of had fun with it. And then the best part, obviously, living kind of somewhat northern Minnesota, bought a plow truck. Prior, I'd just been using my Ranger, and well, as you can see, there's no snow. This is January 1st, 2025 in northern Minnesota. And so basically, since I've bought this thing, there really hasn't been much snow. So you're welcome to everybody else who doesn't want snow. Bought this truck, and that was the solution. Anyways, hope you have a good day. Bye.